Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me a great pleasure to be here at the Avatar conference, and I would like to take this opportunity to share about what we at SGGSC are doing for our people with disabilities. When we started off our DNI journey, our mission was to promote and leverage a diverse workforce while creating a workplace which fosters creativity and innovation. It's also how to build leadership capability, organizational capability, and an inclusive mindset in an organization. The intent was to provide an equal opportunity for everyone to excel in their chosen career with us at SG. And what we looked at as our strategy was, one, how do we brand ourselves as a workplace for equal opportunities for people with diverse experience? It's not just branding, it's like how do we actually behave in such a manner? Then the other one was inorganic growth. How are we going to hire staff with diverse background from the market, especially in leadership areas? And diversity really would not be possible if we don't have an inclusive mindset in the organization. So how to promote an inclusive mindset, that was also one of the key areas which we focused upon. And organic growth, while we can hire from the market, we also wanted to identify people with diverse backgrounds within our employees and look at how do we move them to leadership roles, how do we give them the necessary support required for that. And finally, how do we contribute to SG Group's diversity agenda, where we wanted to create a very inclusive workspace where everyone are respected irrespective of their gender, generation, social background, or disability. Now, when we looked at people with disabilities specifically, our ambition for that was to create an inclusive work environment, which is your facilities, your IT infrastructure, and also the general culture in the organization, which we want that to help us to attract, retain, and develop staff with disabilities. The important point to note here is that while many of us are good in attracting people with disability into the organization, retaining them and developing them becomes a bigger challenge. And we thought by doing this, we can become an employer of choice for people with disability. And our end state, by doing this, what were we trying to achieve? One, we wanted to have our PWD staff be themselves every day without the fear of being excluded or being judged based on their disability. We wanted them to be autonomous and be treated fairly in the organization. We also wanted our staff to feel included in every conversation, meeting, and everything which happened in the organization like any other employee. So some of the key initiatives we took was we started out by having a facility and an IT audit done. Basically, we partnered with an NGO to come in and audit our systems, our facilities, and they came up with a list of recommendations to make our workplace PWD friendly. We then took these recommendations to our existing PW staff and asked them to prioritize on what would make a big difference to them. And then based on that, we introduced a couple of things. One was the software part of it, where we got in software which helped people do their work better. But we also made changes like having ramps, having braille signs everywhere in the organization, creating easy access turnstiles at our entrance, and things like reducing the height of our reception counter. So these are some of the things which we did based on the report which we got, as well as feedback from our PWD staff. The next important thing was sensitization training. So whichever team was hiring a PWD staff, we did ensure that the members in the team underwent sensitization training to make the staff feel more inclusive. And speaking of inclusiveness, we did a couple of things. One of the things was whenever we had a staff with a hearing or a speech disability joining a team, we made a sign language training. We offered it to the team members. Initially, we were offering it only to the team members where such staff were joining, and later we made it open for everyone in the organization. We also included transcription services. So whenever there is a Skype meeting or a Zoom meeting, people could actually see what was being spoken. And finally, we got in sign language interpreters for all our meetings. So whenever we had a meeting, it could be a town hall or it could be any meeting. It could be even a Zoom call nowadays. We also have a sign language interpreter for these meetings. The other important one was the upskilling and reskilling part of it. This is the reason why I say it's important is that many times we just hire them and we assume that people will find their way within the organization. But people with disability do need a lot of support. So we sit down with them, identify what their career aspirations are, and try to see where the gaps are, and also try to help them meet their career aspirations. And one of the nicest things which we did, and personally I felt this made quite a lot of difference, was creating an internal PWD community so that people did feel comfortable and safe to voice out their concerns, feedback, opinions. So we have an internal community of people with disabilities, which meets once in 2 weeks. And people do speak about what's happening, what's going on well. They also give feedback on what we could do better so that we can become a better workplace. While we did all this, we also realized that it's not enough if we do within the organization, and how do we impact the entire ecosystem around. So for that, we did take a couple of steps, which I will share in the next slides. One of the steps which we did was we started out an event called Connections. And this was a platform which we thought which will help us connect with the problem statements which the PWD community had and match them with the solution providers and organizations and NGOs. So this was the intent when we initially started having this event. We launched it in 2018. We had around 50 PWD members who took part in this. They were basically from Bangalore. They came to one place and they shared their experiences and stories. And then in 2019, we took it to a different level where we said, let's not just bring them together, let's do something concretely which helps them. So we partnered with organizations to help them in creating job opportunities. We had organizations which came and did interviews. We provided them with career guidance. We also helped people create LinkedIn profiles and assisted them in their professional journeys. But while we did all this, we did still find a gap which was there in the market in terms of the entire way in which we were approaching the PWD community. So we started thinking of what could we do differently. And there were certain things when we started looking at what was happening around, we realized that we were following a very siloed approach. There are multiple initiatives, everything which is happening, but everything had low impact. A lot of people are doing a lot of things, but then the impact was not really visible. And the entire ecosystem was very fragmented. We had multiple stakeholders, we had multiple people in the mix with the NGOs doing some part of it, some training institutes, everything. And there was no proper interface where all people could connect. And that's when, and there was also from an organizational perspective, we did not have access to, for lack of a better word, a database of people with disability whom we could approach. And then when we also started looking at more statistics, we found out that most of the people with disability in India are either not employed, or in many cases, we also found out that many of them were not even given the basic education because of that disability. So what we thought was, why don't we look at this problem in a different way, move beyond just the organization and look at the community. So right now we are working on a platform, which is a platform to connect people with disabilities with the opportunities that they have. It's not just connecting them with the opportunities, it's basically looking at how can this platform serve all the needs of the PWD community, connect them with peers, help them have mentors, and also look at how through this platform, how they can also get access to various trainings. And finally, subsequently, this could also be a platform where they could search for their jobs. So this is a platform which we are building. Currently, we are building it internally. It's in a beta state, and we plan to go live in January. So once we go live in January, we are hoping to throw this platform open so that any organization or any person with disability can access this platform, and then they could make the connection. So our intent is basically to help connect the members of the PWD community with the right sort of support. It could be from SG, or it could be from any other organization or any other stakeholder. But then this is basically, we just want to create a platform which will enable them to enable to open more opportunities for people of the PWD community. And there was one interesting thing which we did last month when we had the International Week of the Deaf and International Day of Sign Language. during the last week of September, where all of us in the organization, we went on to our social media pages, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, and then we actually we went and we spelled out our name in sign language. And this initiative, which was a very local one initially, became quite viral. And when I last saw, there were a couple of people from the Legislative Assembly in Karnataka, as well as people from other organizations who also are there, passing this on, saying their name in the sign language on social media. This is something which started off as a small idea, and we really, it went quite viral, and we got featured in the newspapers also for this. Again, this is something which we do because we really believe in it. We do have quite a lot of staff in our organization, people with hearing disability and speech disability. And while many of our employees, I think we have quite around 200 of them, actually went through a training on learning sign language so that they could communicate with their team members who had disabilities. I think that's pretty commendable of people, because these were something which people did on their own. And so that has been our journey, and we really are looking at making a difference to the PWD community, not just within SOCGen, but also create an environment for them where they could really flourish. Thank you.
Thanks for having me here. At an increasingly global marketplace, inclusion and diversity are recognized as a critical imperative for business success. It is known by all that diverse and inclusive teams are smarter, more creative, and make better decisions, which translate into better business outcomes. While most organizations are embracing the notion of diversity, the practice of inclusion is overlooked. Diversity by itself is just not enough. Leadership in the 21st century demands that executives and their organizations move beyond diversity alone to capture the potential that comes from inclusion. So if diversity is the mix, then inclusion is making the mix work by leveraging the wealth of knowledge, insights, perspectives in an open, trusting, and diverse workplace. Inclusion requires an active process that includes an awakening and then a mindset you need to continuously cultivate. It can be difficult to shift from long established habits that you have to more inclusive behaviors, especially when people aren't even conscious that they are being exclusionary. My take is that when you're not actively including, you're accidentally excluding. I'll just say that once again, a very important aspect that I'm bringing forth here. When you're not actively including, you are accidentally excluding. HCL is a next generation technology firm operating out of 50 countries with over 153,000 ideapreneurs from 155 nationalities, which is indicative of a highly diverse workforce. Considering this, inclusion is no longer a nice to have, but it is critical to the sustenance of the organization. Diversity has to be leveraged. So at HCL, we believe that every employee has the potential and power to strengthen the innovative and creative culture of the organization, and which can only be done if done and fully leveraged if one feels included and experiences a sense of belonging. So we are deeply cognizant of the fact that the power of diversity remains dormant without inclusion. So you could be focusing totally on diversity, the power of diversity, making business cases on diversity, but it will remain dormant without inclusion being brought to the forefront. As technology, globalization, and evolving workforce continue to shape the future of work, we at HCL are hugely focused on inclusion, as it is a way to maximize talent attraction, growth, and retention. So we believe in cultivating and showcasing an inclusive culture, which is an essential component and can result in increased creativity, productivity, and innovation. And of course, all this will lead to better business results. So to this effect, we have made concentrated efforts to identify, acknowledge, and encourage employees from all backgrounds to be part of our global workforce, with equal opportunities of growth given to them through various platforms we enable under diversity and inclusion strategy. We clearly believe our effort towards creating an inclusive environment should translate into people being, feeling valued, treated equally and with respect. They should feel safe to express their opinion and empowered to take decisions and basically just do their best. So, inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists, but actually making a new and better space for everyone. It's not about addressing, just about addressing how inclusion looks, but meaningfully addressing how inclusion feels. The commitment to be a diverse and inclusive organization actually starts at board level. There is an intentional and continuous focus to create and sustain a culture of equality, self awareness, authenticity, and accountability. And all this in the realm of gender, cross cultural diversity, persons with disabilities, and LGBT inclusion. So, if I were to think of the current times, marked by heightened uncertainty, a perceived lack of control, miscommunication, it presents both challenges and opportunities for promoting diversity and fostering inclusion. Hence, making it more and more important for the leaders to adapt daily practices of inclusive leadership. So, in day-to-day working, how do I incorporate, habits of inclusive leadership is becoming more and more important. For us as an organization, this has been surely an ongoing journey. There are multiple methods and means through which a conscious effort is being made to embed right behaviors, habits in each social interaction at the workplace. The approach that is designed is top down and systemic. There are multiple diversity and inclusion elevators identified to drive the culture of inclusion across the organization. There is also a clear accountability framework for non inclusive behaviors. This has been established to further strengthen our effort on inclusion. We've established a virtual inclusion lab to comprehensively integrate inclusive leadership capabilities into the organization's DNA. It provides a compelling narrative as to why inclusive leadership is critical to business success and clearly lays down micro strategies to make it real. Inclusion Lab addresses the practice of inclusion through a scientific, research based insight that brain treats social threats and rewards with the same intensity as physical threats and rewards. So, in essence, what I'm saying is a positive emotion or reward creates a reason for people to be more forthcoming and collaborative in their interactions, whereas a negative emotion or punishment causes a threat stimulus, which leads to avoidance. It brings forth the perspective that inclusion can hamper one's creativity, problem solving capability, pro social behaviors, just to name a few. Therefore, it's important to ensure that there is less of threat based interaction and more reward based interactions. It is bound to improve collaborations and influence the behaviors of people positively. A conscious effort has to be made to find common ground to enrich the culture of relatedness and belonging. Leaders need to lift people up by creating a climate of psychological safety, which I talked about earlier also, where teams feel free to contribute, know that mistakes are seen as necessary for innovation and growth. It's necessary to create clarity to ensure optimal engagement of employees. Best talents support collaborative teams, and create an environment that fosters productive change. In a sense, what I'm saying is that we need a positive affirmation on all these statements, which I'll be sharing with you from our employees. One being, am I respected and valued? Secondly, am I in the loop? Thirdly, am I given choices and control? Do I belong? Do I get the credit and opportunities? So if we are getting a positive affirmation on each of these questions, then we know that the inclusive behaviors and habits are being brought forth real time at the ground level, by the leaders, by the next levels, right up to the individual contributors. And this requires conscious and intentional effort from each individual within the ecosystem. Under this program, we have the topmost leaders as the sponsors and champions of inclusion. And then we have their next line leaders as the influencers and practitioners of inclusive habits and behaviors. And for each of these levels, we have specific learning pathways that we have curated, which are curated in a deliberate order and cadence to bring about the required behavioral shifts. So overall, our strategic approach has been to create a unified learning experience for leaders, managers, individual contributors, so that the overall impact can be demonstrated, measured, and we see an improvement in the inclusion quotient of employees across the organization. At HCL, we believe that integrating inclusivity into the organization's DNA is an ongoing process and requires commitment from each employee to ensure that its presence is basically a default way to function in each of our workplace interactions. So those could be team meetings, those could be feedback, those could be career discussions, those could be one-on-one discussions. In each interaction, am I exhibiting inclusive behaviors? So attributes like empowerment, accountability, courage, humility, these need to be practiced on a daily basis, encouraging inclusivity in the organization at all levels. With this objective in mind, we've launched another initiative, Inclusion at Scale, and this is for our employees again across the globe to ensure continuous education, increased awareness, and sustained application of inclusive practices. So it's not just that we, employees undergo a curated learning path. We are also, there's a complete sustenance path that has been created in terms of how are they being able to apply these learnings. We measure the impact, and there are tracks to ensure that there is sustenance built in. The content covers various topics like inclusion, biases. There are specific series on inclusive manager series. There is another series for inclusive career discussions. So these are small micro learning nuggets. Could be related to career discussion, could be related to performance management, could be related to giving me greater details about LGBTQ. And as I said, these are in the form of various micro-learning solutions. So these are short, crisp, impactful 5-minute videos which prepare you and support you to shape engaging and meaningful discussions with your teams on the business case for inclusion, managing biases, and micro behaviors. So there are multiple modules for individual contributors as well as managers on inclusive career discussions, inclusive meetings, inclusive performance management, helping, primarily in debiasing from all these aspects. If I talk about the LGBTQ plus series, these are pragmatic, engaging, short animations which are providing deeper understanding and awareness on various aspects of LGBTQ definitions, usage of correct pronouns, allyship, etc. In terms of the metrics, we have very well-defined metrics, such as I talked about inclusion quotient. We are also measuring innovation and ideation. We're measuring increased team collaboration, basically to measure, the effectiveness and reach of these programs that are being driven organization-wide. So we as an organization, are known for our ideapreneurship, our innovative culture. So we want to continue that focus on being creators of opportunity for the most capable and agile workforce out there. And an affirmation of sorts did come to us in the form of recent recognition by Forbes as well as one of the world's best employer 2020. Thank you. That's about it that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, dear Magesh and Anu, for joining us and taking us through your inspirational experiences of moving the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will now have time for the questions and answers, and we have some very interesting questions. Keeping in mind the time limit that we have, we can address a few questions, and we have a very few interesting questions already. And the first question is from Soundarya. Okay, there is a lot of debate on a statement that gender diversity boosts creativity and innovation. Several times, meaning to say that women have a greater creativity and innovation quotient. What is your take on this? I leave it to both of you to take this question because it's not been addressed to any one particular speaker.
So let me go first on this.
Please, please.
I think if you have a very diverse set of people, the amount of ideas, the creative thought process, everything becomes much larger. You get a larger set of different ideas and different ways of thinking coming in. So when you say you get more women in the workforce, obviously you'll start getting a larger set of ideas which come in and people can start working on it, right? So from that perspective, if you have a more diverse workforce with more women in the workforce, you will get larger number of ideas and you will get more creativity at the workspace. But I wouldn't call it as saying one gender is more creative than other. Let's take, for example, we do have the same equal men and women in this thing, but people come with the same set of background, right? So that thought process would be similar. So diversity here means getting people not only from different genders, it could also be from different backgrounds. That's when you get real innovation and creativity, right? For example, it could be also generational background. You could have people of different generations who come in, and then you'll see the amount of ideas, the quality of ideas coming in are much different and much better. I think that's where the real power of diversity is in. Gender diversity is one of it, but I think it's too early to say one gender or one category of people are more innovative and creative than the other.
That's a great point, Magesh. Thank you so much. Anu, we would love to hear from you. What is your take on this?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Well, there are umpteen, research studies, case studies which show that having more women on board surely increases creativity and innovation. So I won't shy away from saying that having more women on the team or in the organization does increase creativity and innovation. But I also, if I look at it from the perspective of, men and women, as humans, the basic need is to, have that feeling of belongingness, to feel included, supported, valued. So whether it's a man or a woman, if in the organization, within the team, if I'm feeling included, then I'll be able to bring my unique and authentic self to work. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anu. There is another question for Magesh. This gentleman has asked, do you think COVID will actually be an enabler for the marginalized talent pool, particularly the persons with disabilities, and would turn the spotlight on them to enter and in some cases perhaps re-enter the workforce?
I think COVID is an enabler for not just people with disability, right? For a lot of segment of population whom
Absolutely.
we never used to consider or who used to find it difficult to get into the workforce, right? Because now you have the flexibility of working from anywhere. And now we have quite a lot of advances made in technology also, right? So people can work from anywhere, anytime. Right? So now it's a totally new paradigm. You have a larger set of workforce which is available for you, and people can work at locations which is convenient to them, at timings which is convenient to them. So I think this is more an opportunity for us to be much more inclusive and get in a different set of people into the workforce.
I think as a follow-on question, Mahima has asked you, Magesh, again, apart from the IT infrastructure, what are the other policies that you have for PWDs?
I think it's also in terms of not just the policies part of it also, right? It's also in terms of how you accompany them through the entire journey. That's also very important. Most of the times when we decide to bring in more people with disability into the workforce, we look at just bringing them in. It's much more than that, right? How do you help them build a career within the organization? And that doesn't come by just policies. It comes by real spending time with them and real change in the way people think about how they interact with people with disabilities, right? So like one of the things which we do is we sit down with them, we have career discussions with them so that they also feel included and they also go through they get the same experience as any other employee in the organization. So it's not a question of creating new policies. It's about how do you treat them in the same manner as you treat every other employee in the organization. That's more important.
Equity. Quickly, Anu, we have just a minute more to end this. So what, according to you, are the 3 pillars to leverage the power of inclusion?
Well, the 3 pillars that I would talk about is, you need to find common ground within your teams, across your peers. It's important because there is, if you find common ground, there is an opportunity to, uncover shared experiences. Second thing is that there has to be a focus on lifting people up. There has to be fairness, making it safe for an individual to come forward and share their views. And third important thing that I've seen is when there isn't clarity, then there are many things which are get impacted. So if they as a leader, as a peer within the team, I'm able to create clarity, I'm giving you a feel of controlling the way you want things to be driven within the team, of course, then inclusion is very positively impacted.
Thank you. Thank you so much once again for the wonderful inputs and great insights, dear Magesh and Anu. We have now come to the close of this breakout session. Thank you very much, all the delegates. The next set of breakaway session will begin exactly at 4:55 p.m. Please do check out our exhibition booths, networking lounge, and the photo booth. And the social media hashtags are of the event are on display. We request everyone to use these hashtags in your social media posts, which is hashtag BoB20 and hashtag Ignite Potential.